Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. During my last road trip to the remote areas of Western Queensland, I came across some quite challenging shooting conditions where I had to photograph in very low light and with super high ISOs. Just before I left, Adobe had released their new AI noise reduction feature that now comes built in with Camera Raw and Lightroom. So I grabbed my most challenging images from the trip and put them through the three programs to see whether DXO Pure Raw and Topaz denoise are still ahead in the noise reduction game, or whether Adobe has actually overtaken the two programs and we can now save a bunch of money going forward. Oh, and I also checked out the new AI removal tool in the beta version of Photoshop because people have been talking very positively about it and I wanted to see what it's all about. So why don't we all go and take a look? The last few days I've been going through the 18,000 images that I took on this trip, and I've already deleted about 15,000 of them, so I'm left with 2,000 to 3,000 quite nice images, and I started to edit a few of them. One of the birds I wanted to get in particular in Queensland was the Burke's parrot, but there's a special challenge with this bird because they're basically nocturnal. They only come to the water sources to drink in the dry outback long before sunrise or long after sunset. So it's very challenging to get some nice photos of them because you have to hope that you get some in half decent light, and even then you're presented with very high ISOs and low shutter speeds. One of the images that I like because the bird did quite a nice pose on a decent perch is this image taken at 51,200 ISOs in the 15th of a second. So totally crazy settings, but since I didn't have anything to lose, I just quickly ran it through DXO Pure Raw. And to my shock, I actually got a quite decent image out of it. So I thought, why don't I try to run this through the AI noise reduction software from Adobe now? So I opened that up, set it to 60%, and ran that file through there. If we compare it side by side with the DXO file, I think it's quite clear that the DXO file had a bunch more details in the bird and on the perch. So I thought, let's not leave out the third player in the game, and I ran the raw file through Topaz denoise AI as well. But when we look at this result, I must say here the file started to fall apart completely, and the other two programs were clearly ahead when it came to removing a noise at this really high, crazy level. So while this might not be the best image in the world afterwards, it's pretty crazy to think that you can get a usable image out of a 51,200 ISO image taken basically when it was still pitch black. So in this extreme scenario, I think that DXO Pure Raw did the overall best job, especially on the perch that looked a lot more kind of washed and painted with the two other programs. But of course, we're not only taking images at crazy high ISO levels. This was just an example I thought was good to share with you because you can see what these different programs do in extreme situations. Before we move on to a major Mitchell's cockatoo, I just quickly wanted to share some more Burke's parrots images with you from this trip that I all ran through DXO Pure Raw to denoise them, used my Pro Set to get the colors right, and then I ran my masterclass workflow on them to get the absolute most out of the file. And I think in the end, the shots turned out pretty nice. What do you guys think? So let's take a look at an easier image taken at ISO 6400 also after sunset of a beautiful major Mitchell's cockatoo. The challenge with this bird is actually that it's coming to cattle trough to drink. And while we were standing there with a group of friends, a lot of young bulls came and wanted to drink from the same cattle trough. There was a bit of a battle and there was a lot of dust in the air and a lot of cows in your background. But in the end, we were lucky because the bulls left, and when we wanted to leave, all the cockatoos came suddenly in, so we managed to get some nice shots. When we open this file in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, you can see how awful the Adobe colors are on this file. So let me quickly put on one of my Pro Sets to make the image look much nicer with just one click. And then I'm going to apply the Adobe noise reduction at 50% now. And I'm also going to run the file through DXO Pure Raw and Topaz denoise. And the results here are even more interesting because it's basically impossible for me to tell the difference between the DXO file and the Adobe file now. In certain areas, the DXO file has more details, and in other areas, the Adobe file has more details. So it's pretty much a wash between the two. The Topaz file in this example is also very close, but would still rank third for me because the colors have shifted a little bit, and overall it looks a little bit more of a washed look and a little bit more of a sharpen. But all three have done a really good job on this major Mitchell's cockatoo. What do you guys think? The main difference I can see in the three files up close is the amount of detail that is maintained in the slightly out of focus wide areas. There, DXO Pure Raw still seems to have a slight edge. This image was definitely a good example as well, where you can see why I love using my Pro Sets, because with just one click I could correct the awful Adobe colors into a fantastic starting point for the editing process that gave me great colors. So if you're interested in transforming your images also with just one click, make sure to check these out down there in the description. And if you want to take your image editing to the next level and get the best results possible, I would also recommend that you check out my masterclass where I teach you step by step everything you need to know in Photoshop to get amazing results. I've used all three programs on a bunch more images and the results were pretty much always very similar to what we've seen. If there's not much noise in the files at all programs are very similar and each of them does a quite good job. But if there's a lot of noise in the files, DXO Pro still seems to be the one that maintains the most detail in most areas, like we can see in the belly of this Major Mitchell's cockatoo here. But overall, the results between Adobe and DXO were very similar. So what does that mean for you and me as photographers? I think it's pretty obvious that for the average person forking out another $80 to $120 a year to buy external noise reduction software doesn't make sense anymore because the Adobe noise reduction software does a very good job now. However, there are cases where especially DXO Pro still does a better job than the Adobe noise reduction software. So for someone like me who likes to get the absolute most out of their images, it still makes sense to have DXO Pro on hand as well if there's a very difficult file. Where I see a little bit of an advantage with DXO Pro over the Adobe noise reduction is that it's easier to use in a way, because it's much easier to do batch processing, for instance. I could grab all the images that I want to edit from a trip, drag them into DXO Pro and run it, come back half an hour later and all the files will be done and the new DNGs will be created. This doesn't work as easily with Adobe, and the other problem with Adobe is that it creates the DNG file in the same folder as the RAW file. So if I drag 100 RAW files into Camera Raw, run the noise reduction, it will create another separate 100 DNG files, and then all these files will suddenly be in my Camera Raw. So that's making a little bit of a mess. On the other hand, Adobe has a huge advantage because you can actually adjust the amount of noise reduction you want to do to your image. DXO Pro is basically a one-click shop and there's not much control over what you do to your images, whereas with the Adobe noise reduction software it's much easier to throttle or increase the noise reduction. The other advantage of DXO Pro is that it seems to be much faster. On my computer it's probably twice as fast as the Adobe noise reduction feature. If you're just doing one image, there's probably not much of a difference, but if you're doing 50 or 100 images, that can add up quite a bit as well. You might wonder why I don't talk as much about Topaz denoise, and that's simply because I don't really use it as my main noise reduction software. I like to use it as sort of the cleaner at the end of my editing process if there's still noise in my images. And when I apply Topaz, I run it on its own layer. So I can easily add a layer mask and then only apply the noise reduction in the areas that need the noise reduction and don't apply it in the other areas. And by using Topaz that way, it does a fantastic job. So for me, Topaz isn't really the tool to get rid of all the noise at the start of the process. That's where DXO Pro or the new Adobe feature are the best, but it's a great cleaner at the end of the editing process, and it can also help you to get a little bit more sharpening into your files. So having one or two of these programs can definitely still be helpful. It's great to see Adobe make such a quantum leap forward when it comes to the AI noise reduction. In the past, it felt like they had almost given up on doing any sort of development, so it's great to see them adding something fantastic to Camera Raw and Lightroom. And it might also mean that we get new camera support much earlier, because that's where DXO Pro used to lack in the past, and oftentimes you actually had to upgrade to a new version to have your new camera supported. So I think DXO Pro and Topaz definitely have to step up their game and come up with some new ideas, because for most people it's just not worth it to spend an extra, let's say $100 a year. Here's another interesting thing I wanted to throw into the room for you to think about. Because when we're actually using AI noise reduction, we're not so much removing the noise from the image, they're actually rendering a new file without the noise using AI technology. So in a sense, an AI noise reduced photo is not your original photo anymore, but a newly rendered photo by the program. So now let's take a look at the new AI remove tool that comes with the beta version of Photoshop. If you want to try it out yourself, you need to go to your Creative Cloud account and then download the beta version of Photoshop, and in there you will find the new remove tool. I came in with very high hopes for this tool because people had been talking very positively about it, and it does a fantastic job with easy sort of cloning tasks. If there's one stick against a clean background, it removes it with no problems at all, and it's super fast. It's definitely improved there, and I think it does a better job than the content-aware fill. However, when it came to trickier images, it kind of started to fall apart a little bit. In this Gengen cockatoo photo, I was quite excited because I thought maybe instead of a 10-minute clone job, this could be a 30-second AI remove tool job now, but it didn't really quite work out that way. It removed the branches going against the background quite well, but all the ones intersecting with the bird, it struggled a fair bit. In some areas it did alright, but overall it gave me quite smushy results and I could just not stick to the feather details and the white feather edges the way I needed it to. So the workflow that I teach in my masterclass with the clone tool and the patch tool still give me by far the best results in situations like these where a stick is intersecting with the bird. The new remove tool is definitely far improved and will only improve going forward, I assume, but especially when you're dealing with feather detail or difficult edges on a bird, it still is not quite sure what to do. I assume it will work much better with people, but with birds and feathers or fur, probably it's still struggling a little bit. So the remove tool will definitely be a welcome helper going forward, but it's not your one-click magic wand remove it all kind of tool. It does a good job in certain situations, but it definitely helps to learn the basics with the patch tool and the clone tool to remove everything you want from an image. When it comes to AI in general, I think these tools will be fantastic helpers going forward, but I'm also a little bit concerned that we start to see a lot of generic and similar looking images because people will be drawn to just click mask here, add this, add that, add a fake background, and then we all end up with these kind of weird looking images that's not what we really want. So I really hope that a lot of you guys will still learn the basics like what I teach in my masterclass with different adjustment layers so you can make sure that your images look unique and you can actually create the image look that you want rather than what the computer thinks it should be. What are your thoughts on the new AI tools from Adobe? Are you going to abandon Topaz denoise and DXO Pure Raw, save that money, invest it somewhere else? Maybe in my masterclass? Let me know in the comments and also make sure to check out some of my other videos. I'm going to head back to the computer to do some more editing. So enjoy your day and I will see you in the next video very soon. Oh, and now it's also the right time to subscribe. Bye!